Hello BookTube, hello friends, welcome to Lizziefaye Loves Books. I'm Elizabeth, and in this video I'd like to talk to you about one of my favorite authors, Laura Ingalls Wilder. Now if you missed it, a couple of weeks ago I announced a brand new readathon. It's the Laura Ingalls Wilder Readathon. It's only going to take place for 4 days between February 7th and February 10th, and those dates are very specific because February 7th is the birthday of Laura Ingalls Wilder in 1867, and her death date was February 10th in 1957. So she lived for 90 full years, and we are so blessed to have the writings about her childhood in the Little House books, and we are blessed to have so much biographical information about her amazing life that has been written by several people who have made a study of doing biographies of Laura Ingalls Wilder. And I have quite an extensive collection of Laura Ingalls Wilder books, both by her and about her family, and also a lot of biographies and things. And I thought since we have the readathon coming up soon, I would share some of those with you. Now, because of the notorious lack of memory on my phone, I'm going to do it in a couple of different videos. So I think in this video we'll concentrate mostly on the children's books that I have on my shelf. And then there are quite a few children's books that are related to Laura Ingalls Wilder that I don't own, and those will be in a separate video as well. And then we'll do a part 2 after this one, which will talk about the biography and the non-fiction information and books that are about Laura Ingalls Wilder and about her family. So let's get started. Now I am down here on the floor because I wanted you to be able to see my Laura Ingalls Wilder shelf. This whole shelf from here to here are all books that are related to Laura Ingalls Wilder or inspired by her in some way. Now I do have a few others. I have a few large oversized ones that don't fit there. And then I've got here one sitting on the floor, which you can't really see, but, and then I have some DVDs and things like that. So I've pulled everything that is relevant here to me so that I can reach it from my spot on the floor. And I've got a kitty here who might want to come and say hello. This is Boo. She is my little half-blind kitty. And because I'm on the floor, she is very curious about what I'm doing. So anyway, she may decide to get in the way of this filming. All right, so I want to first show you what's on my shelf, and just if you're not, now I'm sure most of you are going to be familiar with the actual Little House books, but we'll go through them briefly. And then also this next series I have are the Rose Years. So that's the majority of what we're going to talk about in this video, as well as a few other random things that are geared for children that are related, and I'll show you those as we get to them. So the first book, now there's not a discrepancy about which is book number 1, but there is a discrepancy about which is books 2 and 3, but let's just get to that when we get to that. So the very first book is Little House in the Big Woods. This contains Laura's very earliest memories, and I believe I read somewhere that she did a lot of embellishing with this one because she didn't remember a lot of things from that early age. And she may have also consulted family members, although I think at the time she started writing these that a lot, I mean, her parents were both gone at that point, but maybe there were diaries, maybe she had discussed some of these things with her older sister Mary. I don't know. I can't remember now what I remember. I can't remember what I remember. That doesn't make sense. I can't remember now what I specifically read on this topic, but anyway, this is the very earliest book. Now here's my dog Bob. He wants to say hi. You got to look at the camera, Bob. You got to look at the camera. They're not used to me being on the floor, so everybody's got to come and take a look and see what I'm doing here. Okay, go ahead. Back up. Back up a little bit. He's going to be in the way. All right, so now there is a little bit of, I don't know what the word is, discussion about, now he's going to, Bob, you're not going to walk over me. You're going to have to go back around the other way. This is kind of a hallway here. It's an L-shaped office, and he's used to being able to have free run of the place. Okay, Bob, go on. Go on. Thank you. Love you. Okay, so now I have always thought that book number 2 is Little House on the Prairie, and it is book number 2 of Laura's story. And when I was a kid in the 70s, my mom got me the Yellow Spine editions, soft cover, and they are listed. This is number 2. This is the book that's listed as number 2. And then Melinda from Two Boy Scrappin' commented to my announcement video, and she was talking about Farmer Boy being number 2 in her set. And I went back and looked, and she's absolutely correct. This was written and published before Little House on the Prairie. So I don't know why or who made the publishing decision in the 70s to make Little House on the Prairie number 2. Perhaps it's because of the TV show. It came out in 1974, and they wanted to get this released as quickly as possible because the TV show was starting. This edition, well, I don't even know when my edition was released. These hardcovers came from my mom. She bought these herself, and this particular one says 1953, but that's just the copyright date. This actual printing wasn't in 1953. So, I don't know. Anyway, we could go around and around all day. Long story short, it doesn't really matter when you read Farmer Boy. It can be 2, it can be 3, it can even be later. As long as, if you want to stay in the chronology of it all, you want to read it before you get to one of the Little House books where he comes into play, where he meets Laura. And I don't remember exactly which one that is. Perhaps it's Little Town on the Prairie, or it might be These Happy Golden Years. It's one of those, I think. But I think they knew each other for a while before they started dating, because he was 10 years older than her. I should say courting. He was 10 years older than her, so it was, I think when they met, she was still really too young for him to be interested in at that point. Anyway, Farmer Boy is the story of Almanzo. It does not have Laura in it at all. This is his childhood story of him and his family in Malone, New York, when he was a boy. And it, like I said, it can be read in any order. So then the next book we have is On the Banks of Plum Creek. This, I think, is really a favorite, if not my favorite, because I love the idea of living in a dugout. Now, I've been to this location. The dugout itself is not there. It's collapsed in, and a nice little grassy hill is still there. And there's a sign that says, this is the site where the dugout was. But this just always fascinated me, that they could live in the side of a hill. And I just think that's really, really neat. Now, the next one, By the Shores of Silver Lake, I don't remember a lot about. I've reread the first 4 books on audio as an adult, and they are narrated by Cherry Jones. I happen to own this old cassette copy of Farmer Boy, and my library had the first 4 on CD, and I listened to these right when I first discovered audiobooks, and I first picked up books that I had read before that I remembered from my childhood because I wanted to reminisce. They had the first 4 Nancy Drew books, they had the first 4 Little House books, and those were some of the very earliest audiobooks that I remember listening to as an adult. So, and that was just within the last 20 years since I've been married. So anyway, I don't know what I said all that to say. So I think that's where I stopped rereading. I have not reread any of the others since my childhood and teen years. So I don't remember even exactly where this was, Silver Lake. So the book By the Shores of Silver Lake is the next one in the series. So I'm going to need to reread this in order to know exactly where that takes place. Now, The Long Winter, as I recall, takes place when they lived outside of DeSmet, South Dakota. And I do remember this book being very harsh. They suffered a very, very harsh winter. And because of that, they decided to move into town. And then the next book, Little Town on the Prairie, refers to DeSmet, South Dakota, I believe. So I have been there as well, and there are quite a few things to see in and around that area. So then the next book is about the courtship of Laura and Almanzo, or Manly as she called him, These Happy Golden Years. And then the last one that she wrote that is considered the last one in the series is The First 4 Years. And this details the first 4 years of their wedded life. They had Rose, their only child. I believe they did have one other baby that did not survive, as I recall. This book is full of some tragedies and hardships and things like that they suffered during the first 4 years of their marriage. Now, there are 2 others that I read as a teen, and I believe these were both published posthumously after Laura's death. One of them is called On the Way Home, and I believe that Rose, her daughter, put this together from diary entries of their trip when they moved from South Dakota to Mansfield, Missouri. Now, there was a time in there that they moved to Florida briefly for Almanzo's health, and then I believe they went back to South Dakota and then eventually decided to move to Missouri, and this details that, and it's not very long. It's her diary of that trip. So here's a picture of on the back. This is a pretty famous picture of Laura and Almanzo. And then the next one is a book of letters. So this is epistolary. These are letters that Laura wrote back to Almanzo in 1915 when she took a train to visit her daughter Rose, who was an adult by this point, and she was living in San Francisco. So Rose took a train from Missouri to San Francisco, and these are the letters that she wrote home to Almanzo. So this is very interesting. However, both of these I read in my later teens. This one I probably got a little more out of, although I didn't really get into it as much. I knew that I wanted to read it because I was just desperately interested in Laura Ingalls Wilder, but I still didn't have the maturity to really appreciate what I was reading. And the same for this one, even though I did read it as a teen. So there's some other biographies that I have started and not finished for that same reason. I started them as a younger person, and now that I've been to a lot of the sites where she lived, and I'm just really craving to know more about her and all of that, then I think I do want to go back and reread some of these again, and also much more of the biographies. In fact, I've often kind of toyed with the idea of spending whole years doing these different reading projects, like, the Year of Laura, and I would read all the Laura Ingalls Wilder books, and maybe only Laura Ingalls Wilder books or things related to her and about her. Now, I'm in too many book clubs to realistically do that, but wouldn't it be fun to just have a big reading project like that and just do that? I don't know. I could do it sometime. Another one I've thought of is having a year where I only reread books that I've read before that I loved. I think that would be great, and I probably couldn't even get them all read in 1 year. Anyway, so let's keep going. I need to check and see how many minutes I have left on my memory. I've got about 5. So the next series I have here are the Rose years. Now, the second trip that my mother and I made to Mansfield was when we bought these. I say we. She bought them and gave them to me. I think we left them at her house for a while, and so that she could read them. I have only read, I think, 3 or 4 of them, and I can't really remember much about what I read. So I am planning to start over with the Rose years. In fact, I'm going to make a plan to read this one during the Laura Ingalls Wilder Readathon this year. So the first house, Little House on Rocky Ridge. And Rocky Ridge is the name of the farm in Mansfield, Missouri. And it is also in the Ozarks. So this is referring to the same farm, a little farm in the Ozarks. And these are about Rose's growing up years. In the Land of the Big Red Apple is the next one. Of course, still talking about Missouri. I'm pretty sure she lived all of her life in Missouri, all of her childhood in Missouri, and didn't move. Laura and Almanzo stayed there in Missouri until their deaths. So Rose didn't move from Missouri until her adulthood. And then this next one is On the Other Side of the Hill. I don't think I've read that one. The next one is Little Town in the Ozarks, and I believe that's referring to Mansfield, Missouri. Then New Dawn on Rocky Ridge, of course, Rocky Ridge Farm, outside Mansfield, Missouri. Then On the Banks of the Bayou, or Bayou, however you want to say it. I think different parts of the country, they say it different ways. And then this is her, I believe, embarking on her career as a young adult bachelor girl. And so now I want to show you a few other books on my shelf. I have this one here. I don't remember. I may have gotten this at a book sale, or I may have bought this at one of the bookshops at one of the museums. But this is Old Town in the Green Groves. So the story of this is, if you read any of her biography information, you may have picked up on the fact that there's 2 missing years. I believe it's between On the Banks of Plum Creek and By the Shores of Silver Lake. During those 2 years, the Ingalls family moved to Burr Oak, Iowa, and they either ran a hotel or worked at it or lived in it or something. And so Cynthia Rylant has written this little book about those 2 years in Burr Oak, Iowa. And I believe there is a museum there, and there are sites that you can see. Even though they're not included in the Little House books, they are definitely a part of her life, and you can visit there. That is one of the sites I have not been to, but of course I would love to go. And then I have a few other things I'll show you today. I'm mainly just going to show you the stuff that's focused for children, and this one is debatable. There's some stuff in here that I wouldn't necessarily think would be of interest to children, but it really looks like it would be. So, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with kids reading it. But now, I haven't actually read this book. It's A Little House Sampler, a collection of early stories and reminiscences. This has stories by Laura and also by Rose. Now, what I have listened to is this audio version on cassette. I've listened to this multiple times. There is one ghost story in here written by Rose that gives me the creeps every single time I hear it. And I used to listen to this a lot going to and from Oklahoma. I would take it with me when I was going to be making that drive by myself. And it's good. So then a couple of other things I want to show you that are, I believe, geared for children. Rose wrote a book before Laura ever published anything called Let the Hurricane Roar. And I believe this is geared towards children. And this is the story of, or a story about Charles and Caroline. Now, interestingly enough, in the newer editions, they changed the names to David and Molly. I don't know why. I haven't read this yet, but I'm guessing maybe that this story might conflict with the Charles and Caroline that we know from the Little House books. Maybe. I don't know. That could be. Then I ran across another series, and I got one of them at a used book sale, and I looked it up after I got home. This is called The Days of Laura Ingalls Wilder, Book 1, Missouri Homestead. They're by T.L. Tedrow, and these are the years spent in Mansfield. At least this first book is, and I think it's a series of 4. Anyway, I'm running out of time, and I'll show you the rest in another video. So for now, that's all I have for this video. Let me know if you've read any of these, or if you're interested in reading them, and we'll talk about it in the comments. I hope you're having a great day. Read a good book, and God bless you.